Hello, I'm the real-life fake wizard. Did you know that Access media journalists are lying to your face? On January 21st, 2026, a bunch of gaming journalists got flown out to Los Angeles. They were put up in a nice venue, they were given free meals, per diem cards, Lyft rides. They sat down at high-end PCs and PlayStation 5 Pros that most people can't afford, and they played a game called Highguard for about 4 to 6 hours in a controlled, curated environment with developers hovering nearby. 5 days later, that game launched, and every single one of those journalists published glowing previews. IGN, I'm surprised to say that I like Highguard's chances. Polygon, one of the best shooters in years. Kotaku, feels like something special. TheGamer, unique, fun PvP raid shooter you won't want to miss. PC Gamer, slick gunplay, pretty fun. Screen Rant, comicbook.com, and then actual players got their hands on Highguard, and within 48 hours, the game was sitting at mostly negative reviews on Steam with an 85% concurrent player drop-off. So what happened? Did the journalists lie? Did they play a different game? Or is something else going on here? The truth is often a combination of all three of these ideas, bringing us to the logical conclusion: you can never trust gaming journalism. Today's indie game shoutout is Cavern of Dreams. Embark on a magical quest as Flynn the Dragon to rescue your unhatched siblings in this N64-style 3D platformer. Gain new abilities, meet unique characters, solve puzzles, and beware of the mysterious villain. To learn more about this and hundreds of other indie games, visit our free indie game discovery network, fakeportal.com, or scan the QR code on your screen. Now back to the video. Okay, let's define terms here. What is toxic positivity? Toxic positivity is when you force optimism onto a situation that doesn't warrant it. It's dismissing legitimate concerns with phrases like, just stay positive, or good vibes only, or everything happens for a reason. It's treating negativity itself as the problem rather than the thing people are being negative about. In psychology, this is recognized as harmful. It invalidates people's emotions. It prevents them from processing genuine problems. It creates shame around feeling anything other than being happy. And in the gaming industry, it's become a manipulation tactic. Here's how it works. A game comes out. Players have legitimate complaints. Perhaps the game is buggy, the game is boring, the game is poorly optimized, the game dismisses and undermines the legacy that got the game to this point. Maybe the game doesn't work as advertised. These are real problems. These are measurable problems, problems you can point to and say, this game is broken and here's why. And instead of acknowledging those problems, the response from journalists and developers and influencers is, why is it trendy to hate on new games? Can't we just let things cook? Give it a chance, people. Stop being so negative. That is toxic positivity. That's using the language of emotional wellness to dismiss legitimate consumer feedback. This is treating criticism as a character flaw rather than a response to a product that isn't good enough. And with Highguard in mind, we all just watched this happen in real time. Take a look at Cliff Bleszinski, Cliffy B, the guy who made Gears of War, who I have met in real life and have tremendous respect for. That rhymed, it wasn't supposed to. On January 27th, right as Highguard was getting hammered on Steam, he posted this, quote, "When did it become trendy to hate on a new game? It's exhausting." 3,000 likes, 2,000 replies, and the replies were brutal because people saw exactly what that post was doing. It was dismissing legitimate criticism as trendy hate. It was framing any problem as the audience's attitude rather than the product's quality. And the journalists, well, they amplified it. High-profile devs defend Highguard amid backlash. PC Gamer published multiple articles defending the game, calling the Steam reviews review bombing, and blaming the noxious cloud of internet hate. Review bombing and calling criticism review bombing is another form of manipulation that these journalists and influencers use. I did a video on it here, and it was one of my favorite videos like I've ever done. Check it out after this. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice, actual players were saying things like, The maps are too big for 3v3. The movement is clunky. The zip lines are suboptimal. The optimization itself is terrible. I have an RTX 4090 and I'm having problems. The game is boring. There's no lore. There's no cohesion. It feels generic. The looting phase is empty. It's trying to be too much without having an identity of its own. This isn't really trendy hate. People are giving specific, actionable complaints about a product that costs time and energy to play. This game might be free to play, but guess what? There are 100 other free-to-play games out there too. And there are hundreds of games out there people have already spent money and time on. If you're putting out a product, you need to earn a customer's money, yes, but also you need to earn their time. Instead of engaging with this fact, the industry's response is constantly, stop being negative, which is pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. It's gaslighting. Now let's talk about why this happens. Why would gaming journalists feel compelled to be toxically positive all the time? What's in it for them? Well, this should be obvious by now. Enough creators call it out, right? I do all the time. The answer is access. Gaming journalism runs on access. If you want to cover games, you need early copies, you need review codes, you need invites to preview events, you need interviews with developers, you need footage before anyone else has it. And all of that comes from the publishers and developers themselves. They have to give access to these things. So what happens if you write something negative? What happens if you publish a review that says this game is bad? Maybe don't buy it. Well, maybe you don't get invited to the next event with the next company. Maybe your review code for the next big release arrives 3 days late. Maybe that interview you requested just never gets scheduled. I'm not saying this is explicitly stated, right? Nobody sends an email that says, if you give us a bad review, you're blacklisted. It doesn't work like that. It's much more subtle. It's a relationship, and like any relationship, if you piss off the other party, things get a little awkward. So journalists self-censor, not because they're told to, right? No, because they understand the game. They know that their access depends on maintaining good relationships with the people they're supposed to be objectively covering. Access media journalists are not really journalists. They are public relations managers with extra steps built in. This is marketing disguised as news, and it's been going on for decades. But let's look at Highguard specifically here because it's a great case study. The preview event happened on January 21st. Journalists flew to LA, or they already lived there. They played the game for 4 to 6 hours in ideal conditions. High-end hardware, developer support, curated matches, free food, a nice venue, and then they wrote their previews, and the previews were overwhelmingly positive. Now, completely regardless to the fact that the internet rejected these shilling previews, which they did. These access media journalists and influencers got roasted in their comments for engaging in this marketing manipulation, but that doesn't necessarily matter for the point I'm about to make. So the journalists said this game was great, like all collectively, and then the game came out, and it had 97,000 concurrent players on launch day, specifically because of the amount of curiosity this game had. The marketing behind this successfully made people curious. And within 3 days, we are now down to 7,000 players concurrent at the time of recording this. That is a 92.5% drop-off for Highguard, which leads us to an obvious conclusion. If 92% of the gaming populace gave up on this game after 3 days, then the access media was either lying to you or they're just so out of touch they don't know who or what gamers actually want anymore, or they don't care, and therefore should not be part of the machine that informs on the news in anything, not just in gaming. This is the greatest mask-off moment in recent memory next to Concord. You can run damage control for your friends and financiers, but now we've seen you for what you are, and monsters wear many faces. Either way, gamers got played. You were told this game was special. You were told it deserved a chance. And what you actually got was an undercooked, generic, poorly optimized live service game that couldn't maintain players for 48 hours. And this is where the review bombing narrative comes up, because that's the escape hatch. That's how they dismiss the feedback without actually having to engage with it. Oh, Highguard isn't actually bad. It's just being review bombed, you guys. It's trendy to hate on things. The internet has made up its mind before the game launched. A single tear rolls down. cowards. PC Gamer literally published an article titled, "Highguard is fine when you don't have an internet in your ear telling you it's nasty." You know what that is? That's gaslighting. That's telling players that their experience is invalid because the internet influenced them. That's saying you don't actually think the game is bad, you've just been told to think that it is. Except, no. People played this game, 92% of which dropped off. They experienced the empty maps and mining the stupid ore to sell back to this stupid vendor, even though there's abundantly chests everywhere. They formed their own opinions based on their own experiences. And then they got told those opinions were manufactured by controlled internet mob hate. This is what toxic positivity does. It invalidates your experience. It tells you that your criticism is the problem, not the product. Never the product, never the company involved. It makes you question whether your feelings are legitimate, and it protects the people who made the bad product from ever having to take responsibility for it. Now, I can hear some of you already in the comments, "Wizard, come on, not every journalist is corrupt, not every positive review is paid for. Some people genuinely like Highguard." And you're right. I'm sure some of them did. I'm not saying every journalist is consciously shilling. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy where someone hands them a check and says, "Write nice things." But here's the problem. The incentive structure is broken. The system is set up in a way where positive coverage is rewarded and negative coverage is punished. And that means even honest journalists operating in good faith are influenced by forces that push them towards positivity. You don't have to be corrupt to be compromised. You just have to exist in a system where your livelihood depends on maintaining relationships with the people you cover. Like, that's enough. That's all it takes. And when every major outlet publishes glowing previews of a game that turns out to be mediocre at best, when the player experience doesn't match the press coverage, when Steam reviews are 63% negative while Metacritic scores are in 65 and climbing, this is a pattern. It's not a coincidence anymore. And the pattern tells you something about who these journalists are really serving. And guess what, bucko? It ain't you. You know, I often talk about there being 5 types of people ruining entertainment. There's corporate executives, marketing professionals, journalists, influencers, and writers that don't know how to write. And there's a lot of those. But in this instance, the journalists are doing exactly what I say that they do. They're not gatekeepers protecting consumers from bad products. They're gatekeepers protecting corporations from consumer backlash. Their job, in theory, is to tell you whether something is worth your time and money, to be a voice evaluating products on behalf of the audience. That's what journalism is supposed to be, but they aren't independent voices as they're supposed to be. Who owns all these outlets? Yeah, like when IGN publishes a glowing preview of Highguard, who benefits? When PC Gamer runs defense against review bombing, whose interests are they serving? We talk about journalists like they're independent actors making editorial choices, but they're not. They're employees. They work for companies, and those companies have owners. Those owners have shareholders, and those shareholders want returns. So let's follow the money. IGN is owned by Ziff Davis. Ziff Davis is a publicly traded digital media company. They also own CNET, who published a positive Highguard preview, and Rock Paper Shotgun, which published a positive Highguard preview. Same parent company, 3 different outlets, 3 positive takes. Funny how that all works, huh? PC Gamer and Games Radar are both owned by Future PLC. That's a British media conglomerate, publicly traded, shareholders to answer to, quarterly earnings to hit, and both of those outlets ran defense for Highguard. Multiple articles from PC Gamer specifically telling you not to trust the negative reviews. Polygon, TheGamer, and Screen Rant are all owned by Valnet Inc. Valnet acquired Polygon in 2025, which wasn't too long ago, so when Polygon calls Highguard, quote, one of the best new shooters in years, and Screen Rant says, I believe the hype, that's not 2 independent outlets reaching the same conclusion. That's one company publishing the same opinion twice under 2 different mastheads. Kotaku got bought out by Kellops Group in 2025. Game Informer got bought by Gunzilla Games. Comicbook.com is partially owned by Savage Ventures. GameSpot is owned by Fandom Inc. Do you see where this is going? These aren't independent journalism outlets. They're subsidiaries of much larger corporations. Media properties owned by conglomerates that have financial interests extending way beyond just covering video games. And when your parent company has shareholders that demand growth, rightfully so, when your existence depends on ad revenue from the same publishers you're supposed to be objectively covering, when your corporate siblings are all publishing the same positive hot takes, what do you think happens to editorial independence? It dies. That's what's happened. It died quietly and nobody notices because the articles still have bylines and the websites still look like journalism. But the rabbit hole has no end here, now does it? About 90% of American media is controlled by 5 major corporations. 5. That's TV, that's news, that's print, that's digital. The illusion of choice, the illusion of diverse perspectives is just that, an illusion. You're reading different websites that are owned by the same people, pushing the same narratives, serving the same financial interests. And gaming media is no different. It's actually worse in some ways because the industry is smaller and much more incestuous. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone has worked with everyone. The journalists went to school with the developers. The editors used to work at the publishers. The parent companies have advertising deals with the platform holders. There's actually a term for this: interlocking directorates. It's when board members of one company also serve on the boards of other companies, creating direct conflicts of interest. And while I can't prove that's happening at every single major gaming news outlet, the structural incentives are the same here. The people who own the media have financial relationships with the people who make the products the media covers. And studies have shown what that does. And not just in gaming media, in all media, in all of the press. 50% of investigative journalists report that stories go unreported if they would harm the outlet's finances. Half of all potentially important stories just don't get published because they piss off the wrong people. 61% of journalists say corporate owners influence story selection, not explicitly, not through memos that say don't cover this, but through culture, through hiring, through which stories get promoted and which ones get buried, through which writers get raises and which ones get managed out. This is how the corporate media works. It's been documented, it's been studied, and it applies directly to the gaming press. It also applies to the press around the world. Like, this is a worldwide problem, as I said earlier. But we're just talking about gaming here in this video. However, if you start realizing all the news you're fed is only 50% of the truth and curated for shareholders, well, that thought process is going to get me kicked off of YouTube now, won't it? So when IGN and Polygon and Kotaku and PC Gamer all publish positive reviews on the same game on the same day after attending the same press event, you gotta ask yourself, what are we doing here, man? How are we still giving a flying f*** about anything these people have to say? These outlets don't exist to serve you. You are not the customer. You are the product. Your eyeballs are what they sell to advertisers. Your clicks are what they report to the shareholders. And if lying to you, or at least aggressively spinning the truth, generates more clicks than honest criticism, then that's what they're going to do. When Concord flopped, people lost their jobs. When Suicide Squad flopped, Rocksteady went through layoffs. When live service games fail, it's not the executives who suffer. It's the developers, it's the artists, the QA testers. The people who actually made the thing are the ones that suffer. And you know what contributes to those failures? Toxic positivity. Journalists who hype up games that aren't ready. Influencers who tell audiences to give things a chance when the product doesn't deserve a chance. A culture that treats all criticism as negativity and all negativity as dangerous. Think about it. What happens when you tell developers that everything is fine when it isn't? They don't fix the problems. They think the problems don't exist. They don't see any of the problems. They're also then unwilling to pursue better or try their best. They'll launch a product thinking it's ready when it's not. And then when it fails, people will get fired. The gaming industry has lost over 45,000 jobs since 2022, and a huge chunk of those losses came from live service failures that were hyped by the press and then rejected by paying customer gamers. Toxic positivity isn't a kindness. You're not being nice when you're toxically positive. You're actually enabling. You're an enabler. You're telling someone their house is fine while it burns down around them. And the people who get hurt aren't the journalists who wrote the nice reviews. It's the workers who lose their livelihoods when reality finally catches up. So what do? How do we navigate this? What am I supposed to take away from this, Wizard? What am I supposed to do with this news? Well, stop trusting gaming journalists. Actually, you know what? No, that's too easy. And it's too simple, because most of you watching are already going to say, Wizard, I already don't trust them. So let's take it up to the next step. Here are 3 things you can do in combination. Number 1, trust your gut. Trust your own experience. If a game feels bad to you, if any product feels bad to you, it is bad for you. You don't need a journalist to validate that. You don't need Kotaku's permission to think something sucks. Your opinion is formed by your experience, and your experience is valid. Don't let them gaslight you any other way. Number 2, and this is the big one, don't give them the air to breathe. When they put out their hot takes and videos and articles, don't click, don't watch, don't comment, don't share. These algorithms are built around engagement. If you don't engage with them after an algorithm puts their content in front of you, you snuff out their flame. By choosing not to engage, social media platforms will register that as bad content. And if enough of us stopped engaging with their stuff, their content will stop being promoted altogether. You will effectively starve them. Number 3, find people you do trust. Wait for games and movies and anything really to release, and then keep up with the creators you like to report from an unbiased position. Follow people who are uncompromised. You deserve better than this. You deserve honest coverage. You deserve journalists who serve you instead of serving the companies they cover. And until that changes, assume everything you read from major gaming outlets is marketing, because functionally, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, look, Highguard is probably going to die. The player count is down 92%. The reviews are bad. No amount of toxic positivity from PC Gamer and Kotaku is going to save it. And when it does die, the journalists who hyped it will move on to the next thing. They'll get invited to the next preview event. They'll eat the free meals and play on the demo units and write the glowing previews. And the cycle will continue, because that's what this industry is. It's a machine that manufactures hype, harvests money, and discards the products that don't perform. And gaming journalism isn't here to protect you from that machine. Access media journalism is the machine. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire others to do so as well. And for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus. Yeah, man. Whew.